McLaren scored their first 1-2 finish after the 2021 Monza GP, and it seems like the Woking-based squad is now the favourite to win the Constructors' Championship. However, having two competitive drivers in one team tends to spark some issues from time to time, and this time it was visible that Norris wasn't satisfied with how the race ended up for him, especially with Verstappen being further down the grid. With the Drivers' Championship still in reach and with the RB20 losing its dominance, could the intra-team tension between Norris and Piastri ruin the chemistry in McLaren? And can Norris fight for the Drivers' Championship after all the messages received today? It goes without saying that the 1-2 finish of McLaren was one of the most dominant showings that the sport has seen in this season, and it didn't come on pure luck. The Woking-based squad has locked the front row and dominated from the first lap, with Verstappen having to give the second position back to Norris due to him overtaking outside of the track. The RB20 has struggled to keep the pace afterwards and was under huge threat from Hamilton's Mercedes, forcing the Dutchman to go more in defensive mode and further helping McLaren's cause to finish 1-2. But the team had different strategies for both drivers, and this time it turned out that the one for Piastri is the worst one. He stayed a bit longer during the first stint on the medium tyre, and that cost him a position when fighting against his teammate Norris, who managed to pull an undercut move. The swap of positions due to a strategic decision should never be blamed on a driver because it's not him who called the moves, it was the team, which is why the Brit was so reluctant to give his position back, as the difference between P1 and P2 in a race is worth 7 points, which could prove crucial in such a competitive season. Nevertheless, McLaren were adamant that a swap of positions should happen because they're operating as a team, and with Norris not responding to the radio messages, the team were constantly trying to remind him to save some tyres in certain corners, such as turn 4, indirectly telling him to slow down so that Piastri can catch up with him. Although there is no fault to be found in Norris since Piastri didn't nearly have the pace to fight with his teammate, the team ordered for the positions to be swapped, and that was something that Norris should have respected much earlier. Constantly through the race engineer for Norris, Joseph, was saying, "We know you will do the right thing. The way to win a world championship is with a team, and you're going to need Oscar, and you're going to need the team. You've proved your point." This means that Norris has proven that he's faster than Piastri. However, if he needed the help of Piastri, this was one of the opportunities. The Aussie could have easily given him 7 more points in the bag and then waited for the win in another opportunity. Obviously, McLaren knew that situations like this could happen much more frequently in the foreseeable future, because if we are to look at it, they became the youngest duo to lock out a front row, and Piastri, although questionable in the race-based conditions, has been improving a lot. Norris, on the other hand, has the experience factor on his side, and whether you like it or not, he is the type of driver that always knows how to extract the maximum out of the car, even though that hasn't gone in the best of ways in the past couple of races for him. But the difference between Piastri and Norris was around 5 seconds in the favour of the Brit, so Norris himself said that if the team wanted Piastri to win, then they should have pitted him first and not gone for the undercut in a bid to try to save themselves from Mercedes. This is definitely something that is very important because when you have two drivers from the same team ahead, you always want to protect yourself from the third one by pitting one of them earlier and creating a window in which the driver left on the track will defend so that the one who pitted earlier can chase in much better conditions. When talking about the entire situation that happened in Hungary, one that showed that the MCL38 is definitely the most dominant car on the grid right now, and the Constructors' Championship is theirs to lose even though they're still P2, Norris went on to say, "The team asked me to do it, so I did it, and that is it." Up until this point, the McLaren drivers were always obeying team orders because they have come a long way, from a backmarker team starting in 2022 to one who is competing for race wins and potentially even championships in 2024, even though not many were seeing them as such a potential squad at the beginning of the campaign. But it's one thing to fight for P5 and P6 and listen to team orders, and it's another to just give up the lead to Piastri, who is way back in the Drivers' Championship compared to Verstappen, and take away 7 points from Norris, who could have easily been less than 70 points to the 3-time world champion, and take down even more points in the next race in Spa. Piastri has also opened up on the situation, and when talking about the team orders, the Aussie went on to say, Obviously, it was a bit complicated at the end, but I put myself in the right position at the start, and thank you to the team for an amazing effort and an amazing car. The longer you leave the team order, the more you get a bit nervous, but it was well executed by the team, and I think it was the right thing. We can only assume that this call would have been made had a couple of the previous races gone more in Norris's favour, such as the sprint race in China, the race in Imola, Canada and Silverstone, where the team's tactics were quite questionable, and he got a bit unlucky with the safety car conditions. Regardless of that, the championship is alive, but the question is whether the team would give the free pass to both drivers to race properly now that they know Norris can have a proper shot in the Drivers' Championship. Yes, the difference is still too big, but if we are to look at what Verstappen is doing right now, which is absolutely having no chance of catching up with the MCL38 on a pure basis even with a fully upgraded RB20, then we could be seeing a dominance of McLaren thanks to a bunch of their new upgrade packages that seem to work wonders. The situation for McLaren is quite clear. For the first time ever, they didn't botch a strategy that could have seen them lose a bunch of points, similar to what they did in Silverstone, where they left Piastri one lap more on the intermediate tyres and cost him a lot of time. So by the time he was done with the pit stop, he was down to P5 and had to climb his way to P4 to end the race there. Maybe this was also a very important factor for McLaren to boost the hope of Piastri, as a similar situation emerged back in 2021's Monza GP, where both McLarens finished 1-2, and even though Norris had the opportunity to overtake Ricciardo and become a race winner for the first time in his career due to the poor form of Ricciardo, the team wanted him to have this win and to boost his confidence for the upcoming period. Obviously, there is something extremely good with the car since both of the drivers are putting competitive times on the board, and if we are to look at the championship standings, the difference between Red Bull and McLaren is just 51 points, and we are still one race away from the summer break. Although one could argue that these are nice problems for McLaren to have, it's also safe to assume that they could turn out to be something much greater if they're not controlled properly. Yes, Piastri has gained a lot of points and is currently in the mix to be in the top 4 drivers of the grid, as Sainz has only 5 points more than him, while Leclerc has an additional 8, so by the summer break, Norris and Piastri could be P2 and P3 in the championship, chasing down Verstappen if the dominance of the Woking base squad continues. But for Norris, it is a pity that he had to give up these 7 points, and even though Verstappen almost retired after the crash with Mercedes, he could have easily finished P3, and then the difference in the Drivers' Championship wouldn't be cut down by that big of a margin. As all things stand, the second part of the season is going to be even more interesting, especially if we are to consider that Verstappen is likely to take a grid penalty for replacing the engine during the Belgian GP if the reports are to be believed. So with Ferrari's struggles still unsorted and with Mercedes struggling on high-temp tracks, could we see yet another dominant showing of McLaren, and will the team intervene if they find themselves in a similar situation again, one that they imposed on themselves? Let us know in the comments below.